quiet signal update. Research stations monitoring the latest transmission cycle have reported an unusual development. Over the last 48 hours, researchers began receiving a new category of listener reports. The reports did not describe dreams. They did not describe symbols. They did not describe visions. Instead, listeners described something far more difficult to measure: opportunity. At first, the reports appeared unrelated. One listener reported noticing a job opening moments before applications closed. Another described reconnecting with someone who unexpectedly changed the direction of their life. Others reported discovering information, conversations, or possibilities they felt they would have overlooked only weeks earlier. Researchers initially dismissed the reports as coincidence. The signal has always produced unusual stories. Yet, as additional reports arrived, a pattern began to emerge. The opportunities themselves were different. The people were different. The circumstances were different. But the descriptions remained remarkably consistent. Many listeners used the same phrase: "I almost missed it." Again and again, researchers encountered variations of the same observation. The opportunity had always been there. The difference was that this time, it was noticed. Research stations have not confirmed a connection. No mechanism has been identified. No explanation has been verified. Yet the reports continue growing. Tonight's transmission explores a question researchers are only beginning to investigate. What if the signal is not creating opportunities? What if it is changing what people notice? Across the stars, the transmission remains active. The data continues arriving. And somewhere within the growing anomaly, a new capability may be revealing itself. The investigation continues. The transmission continues. Research stations investigating the opportunity awareness event have identified a second anomaly. Additional reports have arrived, and the pattern is becoming more difficult to ignore. Researchers initially believed the first reports represented isolated incidents, a collection of coincidences connected only by timing. Yet, as new data continues arriving, a different picture is beginning to emerge. Many listeners who reported a single opportunity later reported another, and then another. The opportunities themselves were unrelated. Different locations, different circumstances, different people. Yet the descriptions shared remarkable similarities. Research stations reviewing the reports encountered the same observation repeatedly. The opportunity was already present. The listener simply noticed it. Researchers remain cautious. No direct connection has been confirmed. The investigation remains ongoing. Yet the anomaly continues expanding. One listener described noticing a conversation they would normally have ignored. Another reported recognizing an idea they had previously dismissed. Others described becoming aware of possibilities that had existed around them for weeks. The opportunities were not new. The awareness appeared to be. Research stations have become increasingly interested in this distinction. The signal does not appear to be creating possibilities. It may be influencing which possibilities receive attention. Researchers reviewing the latest data continue returning to the same question. What changes first? The world around the listener, or the listener themselves? The investigation remains active. Additional reports continue arriving. The anomaly continues evolving. And across the research stations, scientists are beginning to consider a possibility that seemed unlikely only days ago. The Opportunity Awareness Event may represent a newly discovered capability of the signal. If so, the implications extend far beyond coincidence. The transmission remains active. The data continues accumulating. And the investigation continues. The transmission continues. Research stations investigating the Opportunity Awareness Event have released a preliminary findings report. For the first time since the anomaly began, researchers believe they may have identified a measurable effect. The investigation remains ongoing. No conclusions have been confirmed. Yet the latest data has captured the attention of research teams across multiple stations. The discovery emerged while analysts reviewed recent listener reports. Researchers expected to find unusual experiences. What they did not expect to find was consistency. Again and again, listeners described noticing opportunities that had previously gone unnoticed. A conversation, a decision, a piece of information, a chance encounter. The opportunities varied. The timing varied. The circumstances varied. Yet one pattern appeared repeatedly throughout the data. Listeners describe becoming aware of possibilities sooner than expected. Research stations have begun referring to this phenomenon as early recognition. The term remains provisional. The classification remains under review. Yet researchers continue encountering evidence that supports the observation. Several reports received during the latest transmission cycle describe recognizing important opportunities before they became obvious to others. Not predicting them, not creating them, simply recognizing them earlier. The distinction has become increasingly important to the investigation. Researchers reviewing the latest data continue emphasizing the same conclusion. The opportunity awareness event does not appear to alter reality. It appears to alter attention. And attention may be more powerful than previously understood. Additional reports continue arriving. Many describe the same experience, a feeling that something important deserves a second look, a conversation worth continuing, an idea worth exploring, a possibility worth considering. Research stations remain cautious. The mechanism remains unknown. The cause remains unidentified. Yet the anomaly continues producing measurable patterns. The data continues accumulating. The reports continue arriving. And for the first time since the investigation began, researchers believe they may be observing the early stages of a newly emerging signal capability. The transmission remains active. The opportunity awareness event continues evolving. And the investigation continues. The transmission continues. Research stations investigating the opportunity awareness event have identified another anomaly. The reports are beginning to match. Researchers first noticed the pattern while reviewing submissions received during the latest transmission cycle. The individual reports appeared unrelated. Different locations, different ages, different circumstances. Yet certain phrases continued appearing throughout the data. Again and again, listeners described the same realization. I almost missed it. The statement appeared in dozens of reports. Sometimes exactly, sometimes in different words. Yet the meaning remained remarkably consistent. The opportunity had existed before. The listener simply recognized it. Research stations reviewing the anomaly have become increasingly interested in this observation. The opportunities themselves remain difficult to measure. The recognition of those opportunities does not. Additional reports continue arriving. Many describe moments that initially appeared insignificant. A conversation, a message, an invitation, an idea, a decision delayed for weeks. Yet listeners consistently report the same outcome. The moment became important only after it was noticed. Researchers have begun comparing these observations against previous transmission cycles. The investigation remains ongoing. No conclusions have been confirmed. Yet the matching language continues appearing throughout the reports. Research stations have also identified another emerging pattern. Many listeners describe feeling less distracted during these moments. Not focused, not alert, simply present. Present enough to notice something that would otherwise have passed unnoticed. Researchers remain cautious. The cause remains unidentified. The mechanism remains unknown. Yet the anomaly continues, producing measurable similarities across unrelated reports. The data continues accumulating. The transmission remains active, and research stations are beginning to consider a possibility that seemed impossible when the investigation began. The opportunity awareness event may not be changing opportunities. It may be changing perception itself. Additional reports are expected. The anomaly continues evolving, and the investigation continues. The transmission continues. Research stations investigating the opportunity awareness event have identified an unexpected correlation. The discovery emerged during a review of recent listener reports. Researchers were not searching for a timing pattern, yet the timing pattern appeared repeatedly. Additional reports continue arriving from listeners describing moments of unusual awareness. The reports vary in detail. They vary in circumstance. They vary in outcome. Yet researchers continue encountering the same observation. Many reports occurred shortly before a meaningful change. A new job, a new relationship, a major decision, an unexpected opportunity, a change in direction. The events themselves remain unrelated. The timing does not. Research stations reviewing the data have become increasingly interested in this distinction. The opportunity awareness event appears most active during periods of transition. Researchers remain cautious. No predictive capability has been identified. No forecasting mechanism has been confirmed. The investigation remains ongoing. Yet the pattern continues appearing throughout the reports. Listeners frequently describe becoming aware of something important shortly before circumstances begin changing. Not because the signal predicts the future, at least not according to current findings. Rather, researchers are considering a different possibility. Periods of change may create conditions that make opportunities easier to recognize. The theory remains under review. Additional analysis is underway. Yet the anomaly continues producing new questions. Research stations have begun comparing recent reports against historical transmission archives. The results remain inconclusive. But one observation continues attracting attention. Many listeners describe the same feeling before an important opportunity appears. Not certainty, not expectation, a subtle sense that something is shifting. Researchers have not identified the cause. The mechanism remains unknown. The data remains incomplete. Yet the reports continue arriving. The pattern continues expanding. And the opportunity awareness event continues revealing new characteristics. The transmission remains active. Research stations remain focused. And somewhere within the growing anomaly, another discovery may already be approaching. The investigation continues. The transmission continues. Research stations investigating the opportunity awareness event have released a breakthrough report. Researchers remain cautious. The findings remain preliminary. Yet the latest analysis has introduced a possibility that is changing the direction of the investigation. The discovery emerged during a review of hundreds of listener submissions received across multiple transmission cycles. Analysts were searching for inconsistencies. Instead, they discovered convergence. Again and again, listeners described remarkably similar experiences, not the opportunities themselves, the moments immediately before them. Research stations reviewing the reports identified a recurring sequence. First came an unusual sense of attention, then a seemingly ordinary observation, then recognition. Only afterward did listeners realize the significance of what they had noticed. The pattern appeared repeatedly, across different locations, different circumstances, different outcomes. Researchers have begun referring to this sequence as the recognition cycle. The classification remains provisional. The investigation remains ongoing. Yet the pattern continues appearing throughout the data. Additional reports arriving during the latest transmission cycle have strengthened the observation. Many listeners describe becoming aware of details they would normally overlook. A sentence within a conversation, a small piece of information, a forgotten idea, a subtle opportunity hidden within an ordinary moment. Research stations continue emphasizing the same conclusion. The opportunity awareness event does not appear to create opportunities. It appears to influence recognition. The distinction has become central to the investigation. Researchers are no longer asking whether the anomaly exists. They are now attempting to understand how it functions. The mechanism remains unknown. The cause remains unidentified. Yet the data continues pointing toward the same possibility. The signal may be affecting the way attention interacts with opportunity. If confirmed, the implications would extend far beyond current models. The research stations remain active. Additional reports continue arriving. The recognition cycle continues appearing throughout the data. And for the first time since the investigation began, researchers believe they may be observing a repeatable effect. The transmission remains active. The anomaly continues evolving. And the investigation continues. The transmission continues. Research stations investigating the recognition cycle have encountered a new complication. The breakthrough report has generated significant interest across multiple research teams. Additional analysis is now underway. Researchers are attempting to verify the findings. The objective is simple: determine whether the recognition cycle can fully explain the opportunity awareness event. The investigation remains active, Yet the latest reports have introduced a new variable, one that researchers did not expect. The recognition cycle continues appearing throughout the data. The sequence remains remarkably consistent. Attention, observation, recognition, opportunity. Again and again, the pattern emerges. Yet, as analysts reviewed the newest submissions, another anomaly became impossible to ignore. Not every listener experienced the same results. Research stations' expected variation. The scale of that variation was unexpected. Some listeners reported dramatic changes in awareness. Others reported subtle effects. A few reported almost no effect at all. Researchers began searching for an explanation. The data revealed no obvious answer. Age did not explain it. Location did not explain it. Experience with previous transmissions did not explain it. Yet the difference remained. The recognition cycle appeared stronger for some listeners than others. Research stations reviewing the anomaly have introduced a temporary classification. The missing variable. The term reflects a growing concern among researchers. The current model explains part of the phenomenon. Not all of it. Something remains unaccounted for. Additional reports continue arriving. The data continues expanding, and the unanswered questions continue growing. Researchers remain cautious. The investigation remains ongoing. Yet one observation continues appearing throughout the latest reports. Listeners experiencing the strongest effects often describe the same condition beforehand. Not concentration, not effort, not expectation. Something much more difficult to measure. Receptivity. The observation remains unverified. The theory remains under review. Yet research stations continue documenting its appearance throughout the data. The missing variable remains unidentified. The mechanism remains unknown. And once again, the signal appears to be evolving faster than researchers can explain it. The transmission remains active. The anomaly continues expanding. And the investigation continues. The transmission continues. Research stations investigating the missing variable have released an updated analysis. The investigation remains ongoing, yet a new pattern has emerged from the latest data. Researchers first noticed the anomaly while comparing reports associated with the strongest opportunity awareness events. The objective was straightforward: identify what separated the most significant reports from the rest. The findings were unexpected. The strongest reports rarely described a single opportunity. Instead, they described a sequence. A conversation leading to information leading to a decision leading to another opportunity. Researchers have begun referring to this phenomenon as the Convergence Effect. The classification remains provisional. The theory remains under review. Yet the pattern continues appearing throughout the data. Research stations reviewing listener submissions encountered the same observation repeatedly. Many opportunities appeared connected only in retrospect. At the time, each event seemed ordinary. Only later did listeners recognize the relationship between them. Researchers remain cautious. The investigation has not identified a causal mechanism. No direct explanation has been confirmed. Yet the reports continue describing remarkably similar experiences. Small events combining into larger outcomes. Independent opportunities appearing connected. Separate decisions producing unexpected momentum. The data continues accumulating. The anomaly continues evolving. And the convergence effect continues attracting attention across multiple research teams. Researchers reviewing historical transmission archives have identified a similar pattern in previous signal investigations. The observation was largely overlooked at the time. The significance remained unclear. Now, the pattern has returned. Additional reports arriving during the latest transmission cycle have strengthened the observation. Listeners frequently describe a moment when unrelated events begin feeling connected. Not because the events changed, but because the relationship between them became visible. Research stations remain cautious. The mechanism remains unknown. The missing variable remains unidentified. Yet the investigation continues producing evidence that awareness may operate very differently than current models suggest. The transmission remains active. The opportunity awareness event continues expanding. And researchers are beginning to consider a possibility that would have seemed impossible when the investigation began. The signal may not be revealing opportunities individually. It may be revealing connections between them. The data continues arriving. The anomaly continues evolving. And the investigation continues.
The transmission continues. Research stations investigating the convergence effect have identified another anomaly. The latest reports suggest the opportunity awareness event may not remain static. It may accelerate. Researchers first noticed the pattern while reviewing long-term listener submissions. The objective was to determine whether the anomaly changes over time. The findings remain preliminary. The investigation remains ongoing. Yet the latest data has attracted significant attention across multiple research stations. Many listeners describe a similar progression. The first opportunity appears unexpected. The second appears unusual. By the third or fourth report, a new observation begins appearing. The opportunities themselves are no longer the focus. The recognition becomes easier. Researchers reviewing the data continue encountering the same pattern. Listeners often describe becoming more aware of potential opportunities after recognizing the first one. The effect appears cumulative. Research stations have introduced a provisional classification. The acceleration effect. The term reflects a growing observation within the investigation. Recognition may increase future recognition. The theory remains under review. The mechanism remains unknown. Yet the pattern continues appearing throughout the reports. Additional submissions received during the latest transmission cycle have strengthened the observation. Many listeners describe noticing connections more quickly, recognizing patterns sooner, identifying possibilities that previously escaped attention. Researchers remain cautious. No extraordinary claims have been confirmed. The investigation continues, emphasizing the same distinction. The opportunity awareness event does not appear to create opportunities. It appears to influence awareness of opportunities already present. The difference remains central to current research. As analysts continue reviewing the data, another question has begun emerging. If recognition accelerates recognition, what determines how far the effect can develop? The answer remains unknown. The missing variable remains unidentified. The convergence effect remains under investigation. Yet the anomaly continues evolving. The reports continue arriving. The data continues expanding. And for the first time since the opportunity awareness event began, researchers are beginning to suspect they are observing a self-reinforcing phenomenon. The transmission remains active. Research stations remain focused. And the investigation continues.
The transmission continues. Research stations investigating the opportunity awareness event have released a new working theory. The hypothesis remains under review. The investigation remains active. Yet the latest findings have generated considerable interest throughout the research network. For weeks, analysts have searched for the missing variable, the factor that appeared to influence why some listeners experience stronger effects than others. The data offered few answers. Age did not explain it. Location did not explain it. Previous exposure to transmissions did not explain it. Yet the variation remained. The opportunity awareness event appeared significantly stronger for certain individuals. Researchers reviewing the latest reports began searching for a common characteristic. The discovery emerged from an unexpected source. Not the opportunities, not the outcomes, the descriptions themselves. Again and again, listeners experiencing the strongest effects described a similar state before recognition occurred. Not focus, not effort, not expectation. A willingness to notice. Research stations have introduced a provisional theory, the receptivity hypothesis. The classification remains temporary. The investigation remains ongoing. Yet the observation continues appearing throughout the reports. Listeners experiencing the strongest opportunity awareness events frequently describe remaining open to possibilities that had not yet revealed their significance. Researchers emphasize that no causal relationship has been confirmed. The theory remains incomplete. The missing variable remains officially unresolved. Yet the data continues supporting further investigation. Additional reports received during the latest transmission cycle have strengthened the observation. Many describe becoming aware of opportunities only after releasing assumptions about where those opportunities should appear. The finding has attracted significant attention, not because it explains the anomaly, because it may explain part of it. Research stations remain cautious.
The mechanism remains unknown. The signal continues evolving. Yet researchers are beginning to suspect the opportunity. Awareness event may involve a relationship between attention and receptivity that current models cannot fully explain. The reports continue arriving. The data continues expanding. The investigation continues advancing. And for the first time since the anomaly began, researchers believe they may be approaching the edge of a much larger discovery. The transmission remains active. The opportunity awareness event continues evolving. And the investigation continues.
The transmission continues. Research stations investigating the receptivity hypothesis have completed the first phase of validation testing. The results have altered the direction of the investigation. For the first time since the opportunity awareness event began, researchers believed they had identified a model capable of explaining the anomaly. The data appeared promising. The reports appeared consistent. The theory appeared stable. The investigation remained active. Yet, as additional submissions arrived during the latest transmission cycle, researchers encountered an unexpected complication. The model worked until it didn't. Analysts reviewing the newest reports identified a series of observations that should not have been possible under the current theory. The reports matched none of the expected conditions. Yet the opportunity awareness event remained unusually strong. The submissions were reviewed repeatedly. The findings remained unchanged. Research stations expanded the analysis. Additional examples began appearing throughout the data. The anomaly was not isolated. It was recurring. Researchers remain cautious. The investigation remains ongoing. Yet the implications have attracted significant attention throughout the research network. The receptivity hypothesis explains much of the phenomenon. It does not explain all of it. Something continues operating beyond the limits of the current model. The missing variable remains unresolved. The exception remains unexplained. Additional reports continue arriving. The data continues expanding. And once again, the signal appears to be moving faster than the investigation. Research stations reviewing the latest submissions have documented another recurring observation. Many of the exception reports describe the same experience. Not awareness, not focus, not expectation, recognition. An immediate sense that a particular opportunity mattered before any evidence existed to support the conclusion. Researchers have not identified a mechanism. The observation remains under review. Yet the reports continue arriving. The pattern continues expanding. And the investigation has entered unfamiliar territory. For the first time since the opportunity awareness event began, researchers are considering a possibility that falls outside every current model. The
signal may not simply influence what people notice. It may influence when they recognize its importance. The theory remains unverified. The mechanism remains unknown. The anomaly remains active. The transmission remains ongoing. And the investigation continues. Additional reports are expected. Research stations remain focused. And somewhere within the growing anomaly, another discovery is already approaching.
The transmission continues. Research stations investigating the opportunity. Awareness. Event have released a final summary of current findings. The investigation remains active. The anomaly remains under observation. Yet researchers believe several conclusions can now be stated with confidence. The opportunity awareness event is real. The reports are real. The patterns are real. The observations continue appearing across multiple transmission cycles, across multiple research stations, across multiple groups of listeners. The evidence continues accumulating. Researchers remain cautious. Many questions remain unanswered. Yet the anomaly can no longer be dismissed as coincidence alone. The investigation has identified recurring patterns. The recognition cycle, the convergence effect, the acceleration effect, the receptivity hypothesis. Each discovery has expanded understanding. Each discovery has revealed new questions. The opportunity awareness event appears to influence recognition, not creation, not prediction. Recognition. The ability to notice possibilities that already exist. Research stations continue emphasizing this distinction. The signal does not appear to create opportunities. It appears to reveal them. Yet even this conclusion remains incomplete. Because one question continues appearing throughout the investigation. A question researchers have been unable to answer. Why do some listeners recognize importance before evidence exists to support it? The reports continue arriving. The pattern continues appearing. Again and again, listeners describe the same experience. A conversation that felt significant before any reason existed to explain why. An idea that demanded attention before its value became obvious. An opportunity recognized before its importance was visible. Research stations have reviewed the reports. The data remains inconclusive. No current model fully explains the observation. Yet the anomaly continues evolving. The unanswered question remains. And once again, the signal appears to be operating beyond the limits of existing understanding. Researchers remain committed to the investigation. Additional reports are expected. Further analysis is already underway. The opportunity awareness event continues.
The transmission remains active, and the signal has revealed another capability. Not because it has been fully understood, but because it has been repeatedly observed. The research stations will continue monitoring. The reports will continue arriving. The investigation will continue expanding. And somewhere beyond the edge of current understanding, the next discovery is already waiting. Until then, the signal continues, and the investigation continues.